Assalamu alaikum. My name is Haider Pasha, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Symantec. And I've been with Symantec for about 4 years. Prior to joining Symantec, I worked for about 15 years with Cisco. I spent about half of that time in the Silicon Valley area, and then the other half for Middle East and Africa, based out of Dubai. And I'm currently based out of Dubai, but I cover emerging markets for Symantec. And emerging markets for us is Middle East, Africa, Russia, Eastern Europe. So I want to start by talking about an important topic in our industry, and it's the topic of innovation. And I'm not talking about incremental innovation. I'm talking about radical innovation. Incremental innovation are those small steps that you take that allow us to make and perfect a certain product or a certain technology within the certain industry that we're working in. Radical innovation are those leapfrogs that we can make, the giant steps that we can do beyond where we are today within our industry versus our competitors and where we want to be in the future. And so radical innovation is something that in the security industry specifically, and other organizations and other industries as well, is something that analytics and machine learning can definitely support with. And I'd like to start by giving you some examples that have nothing to do with security, and then show you some examples of what security might look like within, for radical innovation. And then I'd like to talk very quickly about Symantec. What are we doing as a cybersecurity company, one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the industry, and how are we using analytics and machine learning and artificial intelligence in order to radically innovate? Before I start, I want to give you an example of something I typically do when I travel around the region. So as I mentioned, I cover 84 countries, and one of the key things that I try and do is I try and learn the culture of the local countries. I try and ask questions of people that I meet. And when I meet a traditional architect, I'm not talking about an IT architect, I'm talking about people who design buildings and structures. So when I meet a traditional architect, one of the questions I ask those people is I say, what would you think is one of the greatest achievements that man has made with respect to architecture, so traditional architecture? And majority of the time, the response I get in our part of the world is the Aya Sophia. Now, the Aya Sophia, for those of you that have seen it or have had the pleasure of seeing this, is a structure that was built about 1,500 years ago in Turkey. It's in Istanbul. And it was built during the Byzantine Empire. And the first roughly 1,000 years or so, it was used as a church, but then the last 500 years, it was used as a mosque until the first Turkish president converted it to a museum. And so it is now officially a museum that you can visit in Istanbul. But why is it so unique? And I can see, actually, I don't know, guys, in the back, the image is a little bit distorted. I can see it clearly on the front screens, but I can't see it properly in the back. So I don't know if, can you maybe adjust the visual there a little bit? Because it doesn't look clear to me. So as they're adjusting that, let me share some facts about the Aya Sophia. As I mentioned, 1,500 years old. The reason why it's so unique, the reason why architects say that it's such a unique structure is at its time, and even till today, it has one of the largest freestanding domes that has ever been created. And this particular dome was only slightly smaller than the Pantheon in Rome. And why is the dome so important? It's important because it has withstood almost 7 massive earthquakes in Turkey. It has withstood many wars in Turkey, and it is still standing. It has not actually fallen. One of the interesting facts about this particular dome is when they placed the dome on the top of the Aya Sophia, the 4 walls around this dome actually crept outwards because of the sheer weight. And what they had to do was they had to invent a new application in order to keep the walls straight, and that application was called cement. And they had to radically innovate in order to make this structure actually hold this particular surface. And so as a result, they created cement, and as I mentioned, the structure has been around and it's withstood so many years of turmoil and earthquakes and whatnot. That's one form of radical innovation. Now, a lot of us in this room, obviously are focused around digitization. We're talking about it today, and we'll be talking about it in most of tomorrow as well. Another question I typically ask IT architects, so people who are obviously within our industry, IT architects, what would you say is one of the greatest achievements that we have made? I mean, the traditional architects obviously say it's the Aya Sophia. As an IT architect, what would you say is one of the great achievements that we've made? Anybody want to take a guess? Well, the majority of the time, the response is the internet. But my argument is that I don't believe the internet is the Aya Sophia of our digital revolution. I don't believe the internet is that specific item. I believe the internet is the cement that will allow us to build future Aya Sophias, and have actually helped us build certain Aya Sophias already, or IT Aya Sophias, in this digital transformation. To give you some examples, you look at our industries. I mean, when we look at digitization, virtually every single industry that we're in has been impacted with digitization. And guys, the image is still not clear. I don't know if there's something you can do here, but it's still not showing up clearly. So, when you look at the healthcare industry, when you look at manufacturing, when you look at retail, with specific industries within the government, as you know, we're making vast changes around digitization to help our citizens around the services that we can offer to them. And we personally, in my opinion, we live in this age of digital revolution where everything from the way we work to the way we live to the way we play to the way we speak to our doctors is all digitally enhanced, from the tools and the services that they're creating. There is, however, unfortunately, a flip side to this, or a challenge that we have. And that challenge is, as you see the increase of smartphones and smart meters and smart cars and smart televisions, and this whole IoT, the Internet of Things drive that we're continuously seeing, the sheer amount of volume that's created as a result of these sensors, as a result of these devices, is incredible. You cannot imagine the actual amount of volume that's being created. And so one of the challenges that we have is to actually use we can't use a simple tool to actually understand all of the various type of logs that we're collecting. So we have to be able to use analytics to really radically innovate. And the key question that I have is, what can we become if we radically innovate, not just in cybersecurity, but within the industry? And I want to start with another example that is completely outside of the security industry. This is a company called Foldit, or Fold IT, as it's also known. Now, Foldit is a website. This was a company built about 5-6 years ago. If you haven't seen this, this is actually a website that was created, and they built an online game. So this is an online game. You can go to this website now, and you can actually start playing this game. And it's actually, the game is built for anyone to basically join. You don't have to be in a certain industry. You can join, and you can start playing, and you start making points and compete with your friends. But what's interesting about this game is that it's based off of biology. And the majority of the people that are playing this game are not biologists. These are regular people. If anyone's played this game called Tetris, growing up I used to play a lot of Tetris. This is essentially a 3D modeling for Tetris. But what's interesting is the rules of the game have been set to match the rules of biology around a field known as protein folding. And the way this protein folding works is you basically communicate and you attach certain enzymes together, and then you make points. And again, you share the points, you share it with your colleagues, and you compete accordingly. But this is, again, it's an online game. I want to warn you, it's very addictive. So if you do actually go and start playing this game, it is quite an addictive game. But what's most interesting is people have put hundreds of thousands of hours as individuals to try and solve this particular problem, which is what they want to, they like the game, they go and they play the game, and they actually want to solve a specific problem to get to the answer. But what's most interesting is this organization, this company, has used the findings from all of these people and have actually published some very prestigious journals. Because what you're actually doing as individuals is you're solving for biological challenges that we're seeing in the field of healthcare. Challenges like Ebola, challenges like cancer. This company actually has taken the findings, the creativity of all these people that are not even biologists, but have actually combined all this information together using analytics, and have now actually started solving some of those problems because these people are so creative when they're actually trying to solve and trying to win in the game that they've created. That's the power of analytics. And that's the power of actually using, siloed individuals to actually be part of a much bigger solution. Now, how can analytics transform security? So in our field, and again, I've been in the security industry for more than 20 years. It's the first time I've seen a revolution around using analytics and machine learning and artificial intelligence to really solve some of the more challenging issues around cybersecurity. How can analytics help that? So let's take a few examples. Let's start with IoT. Traditionally, when you think about IoT and security, you think about hacking. Right? When you think about IoT, you think about, hey, I just heard this new car that just got hacked. Or, hey, I just heard about this new refrigerator that got hacked. Or, hey, did you hear about this new security camera that got turned into a botnet and as a result created the largest distributed denial of service attack in its history, which was the Mirai botnet, if you've heard of the Mirai botnet. Bashar talked about it briefly yesterday. What if every IoT device had a device fact? Much like what you typically find on the back of a Kellogg's cornflakes box or a nutrition box. What if every device from IoT perspective had a device fact? What would be some of the things that you would want to know about those particular devices? Well, I would probably want to know what type of sensory capability does that have? What does it capture audio? Does it also capture video? If it does, maybe I wouldn't put this in my boardroom. Maybe I wouldn't put it even at home if I know that this IoT device is recording. What type of connectivity does it have? Who does it talk to? Does it just talk to Wi-Fi, or does it also talk to Bluetooth? And I would change my perspective on it. What type of security certification does this device have? Who has authorized, and what type of standards does this IoT device comply with before I'm comfortable putting this on my environment? And the way analytics works is by actually using a behavior graph for every single IoT device or type of IoT device. What if I had a graph, and again, I apologize, unfortunately, the video is not showing up properly here. It's fine on the screen, but it's not coming up properly. But the chart is basically showing you a behavior analysis in blue of what the IoT device typically looks like. But when we start seeing those yellows, we know there's an issue. Analytics will help us find those barriers. So when I purchase an IoT device and I know what the device facts are, and I have a graph like this that shows me what is normal, I can check for what is abnormal and actually immediately take action should I see an anomaly in the behavior of that particular device. Let's talk about incident response. Now, incident response generally is very historical. An event has happened. An event did happen. We don't talk about incident response as proactive. We always talk about response specifically. But what if, when you go back to that Mirai botnet, what if we were able to tell you which one of these devices were actually vulnerable? What if we had a way, in the form of the refrigerator example, to start with, what if we had an idea and we knew which refrigerators could be an issue? For example, they use the same username and password, which is a default username and password. And we know they're IP addressable, so they can connect to the internet. Just the identification of the vulnerable device will be an incident in the future. Just knowing that this device is vulnerable will allow us to do incident response proactively. Analytics will help us get there. Let's take another example, security at work and at home. Now, we know that security is very different when we are at work, and we use it very differently when we're at home. I mean, as I mentioned, I've been in the security industry for more than 20 years. But when I am at work, my organization focuses on protecting me as an employee and protecting my data, which is the company's data, and making sure that that's secure. And there are plenty of security vendors even today outside that will sell you a whole bunch of security things that will help you protect your organization. But the moment I go home, I treat security very differently, or we as individuals treat security very differently. I still may use my work laptop to access my work email and perhaps share some documents, but that level of security doesn't exist in my home, such as the way it exists at work. What I propose and what Symantec looks at now is, what if we treated security like we treat our health insurance? I have health insurance. I'm sure you do as well. So when you're at work, and if you catch a cold from your colleague, you have the same type of health insurance versus if you were at home and one of your family members gave you a cold as well. You're protected exactly the same way. The health insurance follows you around as an individual wherever you are. What if security worked the same way? What if security was able to track you where you are, the way you move, the way you share your content, and the way you share your files, and was consistently following you? Of course, keeping in mind your privacy and making sure that your integrity is maintained. But if we followed both of those things, we could follow you around as an individual and know exactly who you interact with, what devices you use, and actually help you stay secure. I want to start by also now moving into the Symantec realm. Now, Symantec, we have a group of about almost roughly 3,000 engineers that focus on research and development, of which about 1,000 or about 800 to 1,000 of them are part of our Symantec research labs. So we're constantly innovating. We're constantly coming out with new ways of helping our customers look at security in a different form. But security is a human problem. My argument is you can't just throw tools at every single problem when it comes to security. Security starts with a human being. And human behavior has taught us to look at security in the cyber realm completely different than the way we look at it in the physical realm. Here's an example. If I were to show you this website, hopefully you can read it, because I know the video is a bit poor. If I were to show you this website and you read through the URL, as somebody who's not a security-focused person, or even in the IT world, you might look at it and say, well, this looks like an interesting website. I see goldmine.com/ it's not a website. I just built the website, by the way. You don't need to go on this website. But you might look and read it and say, well, it looks like there might be some gold involved. I might be able to win something. So my decision is based on what I'm actually reading. Take a look at this picture. This is actually a picture of in England, very close to where my boss lives. And this is a street of where he typically walks down. Would you be comfortable walking down this picture? Again, I know the video quality isn't that strong, but generally, 10 times out of 10, when I speak to people, they're comfortable taking a walk down this street. They don't have any issues. What about this picture? A dark alley in possibly a dangerous environment. Would you be comfortable walking down this street or this alley? Chances are you probably won't. Hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution and DNA have taught us and warned us, and we have this in our system to know that this could be dangerous. Unfortunately, we've only had 20 years in cybersecurity to warn you when you go to a malicious website. And the equivalent of that is something like this. Typically a pop-up. Your certificate is wrong, or something potentially mad might be happening. What's your first instinct when you see a pop-up like this? You just want to get rid of it and get to the website that you want to get to. So one of the first researches that we're doing, and this is one of 20, 30 different research initiatives that we have. I'll just share 2 examples for the sake of time. But one of the first researches that Symantec is looking at is possibly changing the screen when we notice that you're going to a malicious website. Now, we have, as part of our global intelligence network, aggregated the majority of the major websites and even the malicious websites in the world. And we have a massive URL system. So we know when you're going to a malicious website. And possibly what we are looking at now is changing the page so your computer screen becomes dark, or you start to see more red on your screen versus green, for us to warn you and for you to then start questioning, should I go to this website or not, versus throwing a pop-up. That's one of the first researches that we've looked at. The second is using artificial intelligence for security monitoring. I'm sure a lot of people sitting around the room right now have either worked on or have heard of a security information event monitoring tool, a SIM. What's the biggest challenge with setting up a SIM? Typically, a SIM takes anywhere from 9 months to 18 months to properly configure and fine-tune. And the reason is you're dealing with thousands of incidents, false positives, all sorts of challenges around setting it up. And the key issue that we have is those thousands of incidents don't have what we've just developed at Symantec called machine learning. So we take all of that analysis, all of the data that Symantec collects worldwide, and we've now applied machine learning, and we've taught a robot or a system to actually to basically suppress the low priority alerts and to increase or prioritize the high priority alerts. And we've taught the system versus relying on tools and relying on rules, we've basically taught a machine learning system to actually help us reduce false positives. To do basically what a level 1 SOC analyst does is something now that our robot or our computers typically do for us in our data center. Then we went a step further. We've now established artificial intelligence, and we've built a system that we internally call smoke detector. And what this system does is it uses all of those incidents that have been prioritized, and it does artificial intelligent correlation. So if A and B typically happen that are bad, and C is associated with A and B, and it's also bad, then we know C is bad. And so in the future, when C happens by itself, we will always go back and check for A and B as well. That's the artificial intelligence system working in tandem to ensure that the false positives are reduced. And as a result, we've doubled the number of resolve rates on the high severity alerts that we're seeing. Now, just to kind of close off, I'll talk about Symantec very briefly. I mean, we built, based out of machine learning and analytics, we've built a platform known as the Integrated Cyber Defense Platform. What we basically did was we went back and we said, what are those 4 immutable properties that never change in any organization? Regardless of the size, regardless of the industry, regardless of the geography, there are 4 things that never change: information, users, the web or cloud, and the way you message. What type of messaging techniques you're using, WhatsApp or mobile or email and whatnot. And so based on each one of these, we basically put together a platform, or what I call sub-platforms. And the first of that is called threat protection. So using this threat protection platform, we've managed to put together all of our solutions where they're continuously talking to each other. So our email system talks to our endpoint system, and it talks to the network system, which is a proxy. And when we detect a certain threat coming from one side, the others automatically get updated. And that's an integrated, completely integrated threat protection system. I'll show you an example in a minute. Then we put together an information protection platform. So this particular solution basically looks at your data and making sure that the sensitive data stays within your environment and doesn't get leaked or taken elsewhere. Then we use tools in the SOC. So things like detection response tools. Endpoint detection and response, for example, on the, for the specific endpoints. Network forensics that we'll talk about more tomorrow. Specifically, anti-phishing tools that all work in conjunction and are basically communicating with each other to help you detect and respond and make your SOC more efficient and effective. And then finally, a risk management platform where we're basically using everything from risk insight, which allows us to, or allows you to benchmark yourself against other organizations and other industries around the world, as well as allow you to be compliant with our compliance tools, whether if you're following compliance for GDPR or if you're following compliance for a local Kuwait authority, you have the right tools that will continuously assess and make sure that you're compliant, and all of those systems will continuously talk to each other. And what we've done is we've wrapped this around, because all of these solutions are sending us log data as part of our global intelligence network, and we've wrapped it around our cybersecurity service, where we can monitor your traffic on your behalf, we can take action using incident response, we can help train you and your staff and your employees, and we can provide threat intelligence information in the form of a service where you can understand what type of threat intelligence is relevant to you specifically within your organization and within the region. Our relevance as a security company has continued to grow over the course of the last 5 to 6 years. Now, I've only been with Symantec for about 4 years, but I can tell you they were very strong when it came to build on the endpoint, and they were very strong when it came to DLP and managed security services. But with our recent acquisition of Blue Coat, we're essentially sitting across your security fabric, whether you're at the endpoint, the network, or the cloud. And if you're coming from a compliance perspective, we have solutions that integrate. Or if you're coming from data protection perspective, we have solutions that integrate. And we're calling this our SOC workbench, or essentially a workbench where you can use our tools to make your security operations center more effective and more reliant. And all of our solutions are basically working either on-premise or we're moving them to the cloud.
I'd like to remind you, you have 5 more minutes left.
5 minutes, yeah. I only need 5. So to give you an example of that advanced threat protection, all of these solutions from the endpoint, the network, the data are all communicating together, such that when we see a severity, we have a single console now that can basically detect and actually respond. And you as an incident responder can be more effective in terms of responding to the incident or being proactive and actually start hunting for those incidents. And then, of course, we have DLP solutions that work in tandem. And so what we're basically doing at Symantec is we're helping our customers expand their perimeter. You may not be moving to the cloud today, but you will someday. How do we help you expand with web security, with email, using user authentication properly, helping you at the endpoint, all the way up into the cloud? When we initially acquired Blue Coat, we also acquired a solution called CASB 1.0, or Cloud Access Security Broker 1.0. With the integration of all of our solutions and the integration of our platforms and using analytics and machine learning in the background, every single one of these solutions has now been fully integrated, and we're calling this the Cloud Access Security Broker version 2. And here's why it's important. You remember that example I talked about earlier with Fold IT, or Fold It? My challenge today as a security practitioner is, and my argument is, when you add new resources in your organization, you actually increase the level of risk that that organization has, because it's new people that can potentially make mistakes, go to the wrong website, click on the wrong URLs and things like that. But when you make them part of your solution, when you give them the tools like CASB 2.0 and like the integrated cyber defense platform, when they're sitting at home and security has followed them, they can actually take decisions that they're very good at, of information that they know and only they know well. So if you see a message that says, looks like you're backing up you're encrypting your backup storage, and you're just sitting at home, you can actually click and say, nope, that's not me. And you've essentially stopped a ransomware attack, for example. Or if you're sending out a sensitive document and the system actually warns you that this is potentially sensitive, you can also take action and say, no, maybe I shouldn't do this because I know this is not right. So in conclusion, there are a couple of key takeaways that I want you to go away with. The first is we have to think about radical innovation when it comes to cybersecurity, not incremental innovation. We have to think about how analytics can transform security. You have to understand that companies and large cybersecurity organizations like Symantec are continuing to innovate and coming up with new ways of actually addressing the cybersecurity problems through a human effort, not just a tool or a technology effort. And we've built this cyber defense platform, or this integrated cyber defense platform, to help get us there by simplifying that SOC workbench that I just talked about. Thank you very much.